Police officers, what's the dumbest thing you've ever seen a criminal do or say? I was police at the time. In the middle of the night, my partner and I found a car in a cemetery. Stolen cars were dumped there regularly. The car had its windows down and it had only recently been left there. It was still warm to touch. It didn't flag up as stolen, and through the window I could see a meth pipe in plain view. That gives us the ability to search the car. Inside we find a bunch of meth pipes, 3.5 grams of meth, a small amount of cannabis and a handgun. There was also a tablet phone that was unlocked, and while we were searching the car, the tablet kept on receiving messages from people trying to score meth. I had a quick look through the phone and was able to figure out that the owner of the car had come out from the city. I worked rurally at the time to make a score from one of the local gangs, but the gang didn't want her turning up, so arranged to meet her at the cemetery and conduct business somewhere else. I leave a business card under the wipers, not my card but the station's, and on the back I wrote that she, the owner of the car, should come down to the station if she wants to get her stuff back. And sure enough she did. At 9 the next morning, methed out, looking for her drugs and gun. Edit. Layout and clarity. So my personal favorite was when a bloke on a motorbike swerved in front of our squad car and crashed. We hopped out, picked the bike up off him. It was pinning his leg, and asked, "You alright mate?" To which he replied, "Of course I'm alright. What do you mean?" "Well, you just fell off your bike mate." "No I didn't." He just kept insisting that there was no way he could have crashed, and it must have been someone else. Edit. For those concerned, it was a head injury. He did blow a 17 when tested, so we chalked it up to that. I'm not a police officer, but I called the cops on my roommate in college because she tried to attack me and she won't cooperate with the cops, so she got cuffed and was screaming about how she was gonna beat my ass. They were like, "Yeah? You were gonna beat her ass?" And she was agreeing. Mayo. In court later the judge asked her, "So you think it's okay to beat someone's ass if they turn your TV off when you're not there?" And she nodded and said, "Yes I do," and the judge just deep sighed. Friend who is an officer told me this one a little bit ago. He was driving near where a known car thief lived, so he stops by, SUV in the driveway with no tags, walks up, runs the VIN, stole. Now the property had a house on it, and then out back, a small mother-in-law suite, where said thief lived. Officer walks out back, knocks, and then hears a car door. Officer starts running, engine starts, and yup, thief is driving away in the stolen SUV. Officer knows where he ditches stolen cars at, so has an officer stake out that area. Sure enough, 2 hours later the SUV rolls up with a Jeep following it. SUV driver wipes down the dash, wipes down the outside door handle, and gets in the Jeep. Officer pulls them over and arrests them both. Why both? The Jeep is stole. Officer runs her license, send another officer to her address, and guess what? She had a stolen car at her place too. 3 stolen cars recovered, 2 people in jail, all because one officer decided to stop by a thief's last address. I was waiting to report an incident at a local police station when a clearly distraught man came in wheezing and sweating. I wasn't in a rush, so I let him go ahead of me. "I've been robbed. They took everything," he exclaimed when he reached the counter. The officer working the desk asked him the usual what, where, why, and how sort of questions. The gentleman proceeds to explain that he was a local meth dealer and he just got robbed of his entire stash while selling to some teens at the local train station. The officer just said that there's not anything they can do about that, and it's in his best interest to just leave before more questions are raised, and he incriminates himself further. He was fuming and stormed out of the place, slamming the door behind him. I reached the counter and made an offhand comment towards the office. "That must be a first for you." "Apparently not. Apparently drug dealers often come in to report theft of their illicit substances." Not my story, but my police officer friend's. He had gone in to arrest someone for dealing drugs. He was in full uniform, whilst someone else had already been in there undercover. The drug dealer looks at the undercover police officer and says, "You're undercover." "Yes." "Well done." He looks at my uniformed friend and says, "You're undercover too." He was not. Then he looks at someone else not a police officer and says, "And you?" Guy responds with, "How am I an undercover police officer? I just bought drugs off of you." And that's how they made an unexpected arrest at that raid. Not a cop, student paramedic here. Once went to a family with a 2-year-old with difficulty breathing. Walked into the house to find 4 people and the parents smoking weed with the baby in the room. Baby was crying and coughing/spluttering. Couldn't believe my eyes. My mentor swiftly rang for police backup and we filled out some safeguarding paperwork concerns. Pretty sure they arrested them on scene for neglect. Dad's a detective. Had a murder case where a dog walker found a severed head in a park. Over the rest of the morning they found a full set of chopped up body parts around that park. A trail of blood led from each part, and they followed them all the way back to a nearby house, in through the door, and up the stairs to a room, covered in blood with a guy asleep in a bed. Turns out this guy had got drunk with a friend, had an argument, killed him, chopped him up, and hid his body parts in the park, before passing out back at the house. Police caught him literally red-handed. Apparently he was really confused how they got him so quickly. I read a theft suspect her Miranda rights, to which she stated in a recorded interview, "I'm invoking my right to silence and a lawyer because I stole a lot of shit and I don't want to incriminate myself." Suspect was caught for drug possession on the streets and we were talking to the prosecutor to get a warrant for his house. Somehow, he managed to call his wife without a notice, and as we realized what happened we heard him saying, "Honey, go take the fish out of the fridge." After we've got the warrant and searched his house, there was his fridge full of speed and the plate with fish, which his wife had prepared for his return, thrown in the trash. I stopped someone who was in the area of a load of theft from motor vehicles. After a bit of questioning I carried out a search and found numerous wallets, phones, etc. He claimed that all of the cards were his, all 13 different identities. To be fair, he stuck to his story. He carried it all the way to court going not guilty. Stopped a lady for speeding 15 miles per hour over the limit. I asked what a reason could be for going so fast. She said, "I live here. You can't give me a speeding ticket. I live just down the street. I live here. This is unbelievable. I live here." All the people from To Catch a Predator. NBC has online transcripts, and they still come up with the stupidest excuses. Chris Hansen, "Sir, what else could you mean by asking the girl if she was a virgin, and then telling her you wanted to penetrate her anally?" Predator, "I'm just here to watch football, man. She told me she was 18. Hansen, "In the transcripts you clearly say she's 13. You could get in trouble for this, and ask her not to tell anyone." I used to work in arraignments and a guy was entering his not guilty plea and confirming that he was true billed, that they have the right name on his charging instrument. After that the court asks if you can afford an attorney and asks some quick questions before giving you paperwork to request a court-appointed attorney. This guy was booked on unlawful use of a motor vehicle Class C, basically stealing car stereos. The judge asks him if has employed. He says no. The judge asks him what he does for money. "Oh, I steal car stereos at rest stops and sell them." Motor vehicle stop. "License and registration please." Proceeds to lean over to the passenger seat, scoop up a handful of Lomin and tries to put it in the officer's hand. He was locked up for OUI 4th offense. To this day I still wonder if he thought he was passing his correct paperwork or if the Chinese food was some sort of peace offering. Not a police officer, but a witness to a crime, who had to give evidence in court. Basically witnessed a girl crashing her car and barrel rolling it into a tree. She was clearly drunk. The fireman arrived after 10 minutes. Her car had leaked petrol everywhere. Then her husband shows up on foot and tries to calm her down, followed by her mother in a car and the police. She tried to claim that she wasn't the one driving, even though no one else had been in the car. In court a year later, she said her mother had been driving the one who showed up in her own car 10 minutes after the crash. She also punched an officer in the face and was pepper sprayed, but that's a whole other story. Needless to say, she was found guilty. Dispatcher. Had a guy call in and tell us that he's currently violating the protective order by being with his ex who is pregnant by him. Wants us to call the judge and get it dismissed so they can go inside the restaurant and eat. Officer is standing next to my partner who answered the call and asks the guys where he is. so we can send the judge to him. Guy hangs up. Responded to an apartment complex for a kid eating a corn dog and was stuck on the roof. The FD arrives and gets the kid off the roof. I asked the kids why he was eating a corn dog on the roof. His answer was, because I threw it up there. His look of duh left me speechless. DUI trial. Defendant chooses to represent herself. She tries to introduce evidence during the trial, but is quickly blocked by the prosecution. The judge, maybe taking pity on the flaming train wreck that was this woman's defense, asks to see the evidence. It was a receipt from the bar she left before I stopped her that showed that she purchased 2 large margaritas. Her whole defense was, I couldn't have been drunk after only 2 margaritas. She was found guilty. My initial reason for stopping her was that she drove down an embankment on the side of the road to get to a McDonald's drive-thru. My friend is sober driving, and there's not enough seats, so 2 people offer to go in the boot. On the way she gets pulled over, and the officer comes up to the window and asks if she knows why he pulled her over. She says because of the 2 people in my boot. The cop says no, because you failed to indicate at the last intersection. But tell me more about the people in your boot. Sir, can I see your driver's license? I don't have one. Then why were you driving? I wasn't, I was traveling. Second-hand story, as I was the victim of burglary, but heard this from the police officer. I saw the guy breaking into my place on a security camera and called them. They managed to arrest the guy while he was still inside packing up my stuff. He was pretty CCKY to the police, as that he thought that as he hadn't actually left with his bag of swag my stuff, that he hadn't committed a crime yet. All he did was broke a window. My brother is a Detroit cop. Told me this one. They get a call from someone reporting their car was stolen. They show up, and it turns out someone had already stolen the tires off the car. Then a different group stole the actual car. They pushed it 2 blocks without tires and left perfect grooves in the street all the way to their garage. Their defense was, but we didn't steal the tires. Detroit, when we rob you, we really rob you. Not a cop, but a corrections officer. 2 inmates got into a fight in a hallway. I was the closest to them and only saw the start of the fight out of the corner of my eye. In my report I wrote that I saw the 2 inmates fall to the ground with name on top of other inmate. Later, the hearing sergeant was reading the report to one of the inmates so they could dispute any facts in the report they felt were untrue or biased. He asked the inmate if they wanted to dispute any facts in my report. The inmate said, yeah, we didn't fall to the ground. I grabbed the other inmate and slammed his ass on the floor. What would have been a simple fighting charge turned into an assault charge. Woman is waiting for her DUI trial in the courtroom. The lawyers and judge are milling around and getting their paperwork in order. Trial starts in 10 to 15 minutes. The prosecuting attorney asks her if she wants to take the plea deal one last time. She refuses and goes on about how this is unconstitutional and the police and courts are corrupt, and how is she going to take her kid to school, blah blah blah. She is starting to cause a bit of scene, yelling, acting like a child, just being generally annoying. Someone in the room gets a whiff of alcohol. She is out on bond, so she can basically be given a PBT at any time for any reason. Judge orders 1 on her. She registers a 0. 226 in court. This woman who is on trial for DUI had the audacity to drive to court drunk and then moan and groan about how she isn't being treated fairly and we are all corrupt and this is unconstitutional. Not only that, but it explicitly states in your bond conditions that you cannot consume alcohol. So I cuff her and bring her to the jail. She's still running her mouth during the walkover. I had nothing to say. I had absolutely 0 sympathy for her. I could barely hold in my laughter on the walkover to the jail. The confession is my own. Cop, you were going 95 miles an hour. Do you know what the speed limit is? Me, no. Cop, it's 55 miles per hour. Me, sorry sir, I thought it was a 65. Not a cop, but I used to read a lot of police reports at my old job. My favorite was a woman who refused a breathalyzer by telling the cop, I won't blow on that, but I'll blow on your deck. Armed robbery. Shop clerk tells the robbers, if you come back at 7:30 30 PM I will have more money in the register guys. Robbers leave. Police is standing by at 7:30 PM. Armed robbers return to the store and get arrested. Edit. Very sorry for pissing a few people off by forgetting to mention the not me, but this happened recently in Belgium, and it was on the news as explained further by /u/Nightbrinjunk. I thought it was still fitting in this thread. There are so many to choose from, but one sticks out. Dude decides that his dildo no longer is doing the trick by itself, so he uses his creative liberty to construct an apparatus to enhance his experience. He takes his once boring old dildo and bolts it in an upright position on the top of his nightstand to create the Megatron of 6 toys. Unfortunately for him and us, he found himself unable to disengage from his new toy. Evidently, the once pleasurable toy was now a torture device, because his screams of agony were alarming/loud enough to get the attention of his neighbor, who called 911. After 10 minutes of unsuccessful attempts by police and EMS to remove homeboy from his device, we ultimately had to unbolt the toy from the nightstand and transport him to the hospital with the toy still intact. My bill is a cop in a small town. Pulled a car over one night, recognized the kid, smelled weed inside the car, and said give me the weed and I won't search your car, won't give you a ticket, and you can be on your way. Kid fights him, says he doesn't know what that smell is, there's no weed, and how can I trust that you won't take me to the station if I give it to you? Bill promises again that if he hands him the weed, he will let him go, no questions asked. Kid keeps being a moron. Bill searches the car and finds many more drugs hidden all over, as well as weed. Bill says alright, let's go to the station. Kid gets upset and says you said you weren't going to do this. See, I couldn't trust you. I groan and laugh every time I think of that. What a dummy.